I honestly cannot believe that I'm lucky enough to be an average person who gets to experience the PS5 one day after its launch. My friend was lucky enough to snag one on the first day of pre-orders, and it actually came the day of the PS5's launch. But thankfully, he waited so I could make this video, so before we start, I want to thank him. But without any further ado guys, let's get started with the video and look at the main attraction, the PS5 itself. Now, because this is a full overview, I want to start with the unboxing experience, and I can say right off the bat that there's nothing revolutionary about this. Within the main box that contains both the components and the PS5 itself, it breaks down into one smaller box which houses the controller, HDMI cable, power cable, and some manuals, while the other compartment houses the console itself. I want to first admire the design of this console. I understand that it is controversial, and it may not blend well with many living room setups, but I think it's a unique design that definitely stands out. It is much bigger than the previous PS4, but this bigger size allows for better cooling, I assume, and that is definitely evident because the PS5 is much quieter than its predecessor, the PS4. It also has some nice LED lights which can tell you when it's on and also when it is in rest mode. It also comes with a plastic stand that is used to prop it up if you want to lie it flat or stand it up vertically. Personally, I quite like the risk that Sony has taken with this console. It definitely stands out, especially from the Xbox Series X, and I think it definitely plays into this futuristic design of the next generation. However, I do understand if people don't like it as much because it's very controversial and it may not blend in very well with your living room or furniture that you have around. Now the next biggest change to this console undoubtedly is definitely the controller. And can I just say, I was absolutely blown away by the haptic feedback, the adaptive triggers, and motion sense that Sony was able to implement into this controller. This clearly wasn't some afterthought. On the surface, the controller looks very different from the PS4 controller, sticking with the same white and black theme from the console. The controller overall is bigger and more comfortable to hold in my opinion. The side stocks in particular fit the hand very well. However, the primarily white design does mean that it would get dirty much faster, so that is something to keep in mind. Additionally, the controller also comes with a microphone jack and a headphone jack which supports 3D audio, but I'll get into more of that when we talk about gameplay later on in the video. Moving on to some smaller changes, Sony removed the large LED indicator at the back of the PS4 controller for a much smaller one at the front of the PS5 controller. In terms of the feel of joysticks and buttons, I can say that the triangle, square, circle, and X buttons feel a little bigger and a little more spaced out. The D-pad is pretty much unchanged, I didn't really feel any difference there, and the joysticks feel pretty similar as well. And the triggers, even when the controller is off, there's definitely more travel in the PS5's triggers and also a little more tension when pressing it down compared to the PS4. So these were just on the surface differences in terms of size and physical features, but I will get into the haptics and adaptive triggers when I talk about gameplay later on in the video. Okay, so before I move on to the UI, I just want to mention a quick error that my friends and I encountered when setting up the PS5, and some of you guys who get the PS5 might encounter this error. I was hoping I could help in fixing it so you guys don't have the hassle that my friend and I went through. When we first tried booting up the console, we got an error that says the content could not be displayed because it wasn't connected to an HDCP 2.2 port. Now, as I understand it, the HDCP 2.2 port protects against piracy for streaming services like Netflix and YouTube. But luckily, after some digging, we were able to find a workaround to this issue. If you power on the console into safe mode by holding the power button on the PS5 until you hear 2 beeps and then releasing, you can go into the video output and change the HDCP mode from automatic to 1.4. Then the console will restart and you should be able to see all your content without any issue. Just keep in mind that if you do this, you probably will not be able to use apps like Netflix or YouTube because those are probably reserved for HDCP 2.2. So this is a temporary fix if you use those type of apps, but if you don't, this shouldn't affect your gameplay or performance of the console itself. It's strictly more of a security issue. Now let's move on to the UI, and I can say that it's very different from the PS4. Instead of the blue theme that Sony opted for the PS4, this is more of a minimal gray, white, and black theme. There are now several tabs on the top to access different menus such as the store, game library, and media. I will also mention that the PS Store is now completely integrated into the UI instead of being an app that you launch, which I think makes the experience a little more seamless. Within the settings menu, there are also a lot more customization options for the controller, such as changing the intensity of haptics and also adjusting the mic volume. There's also some additional features with rest mode and some accessibility options that weren't there on the PS4. Now getting into some more game-specific features, Sony has added these hints and activity cards within games. Hints are basically provided by the developers to the player in case they get stuck, or give them clues as to where certain items are within the game. This feature definitely depends on how much developers use it. Some developers might think that games are better off without it, while some may extensively use it. So this feature is only as good as developers make it, but I think if it's used effectively, it can be really helpful when playing games and tracking your progress. There's also a picture-in-picture mode where you can stream the game that your friend is playing in a small window while you are in your own game and you guys can talk freely. I think that's pretty cool because it's more immersive and it's more engaging when talking to your friend about different games. You can see what he's doing, if he's trying to show you something, or if you guys are trying to see something together, you can see that on his screen while you play your own game. I think that's a cool feature, and it's definitely a feature that can be very useful, especially when you're looking at hints or activity cards. You can have it in a small window while you follow along on your own screen. So definitely a useful feature that Sony has added. And finally, the menu when you hold on the PS button is now a bar at the bottom of the screen that shows the connected devices, the downloads, and the switcher, which basically allows you to switch between games very quickly because the PS5 now supports a much faster SSD. One other thing I did want to mention is that download speeds do seem to be a lot faster on the PS5 compared to the PS4. Now, I know this depends a lot on your network speed, but it seems like when downloading a game like Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is roughly 40 gigabytes, it only took my friend about an hour to download it, so it definitely shows an improvement in speeds. This could be because Sony upgraded the network adapter within the PS5, but you should be getting much faster connections overall, depending on your Wi-Fi again, but it seems like in general, downloads are faster. So overall, I think this UI will still be familiar to those who use the PS4, but it adds some nice refinements and features that players can take advantage of. Okay, let's move to gameplay, which is undoubtedly what we've all been waiting for. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't capture any gameplay of Spider-Man Miles Morales because my friend actually was downloading it as I was recording and it didn't download in time, but instead we went into Astro's Playroom so we could see all the features of the PS5 and its controller. Now the first thing that is immediately noticeable is the responsiveness of the controller. It seems that even through Bluetooth pairing, Sony has reduced input lag between the controller and the console. The next thing apparent even from the title screen is the haptics in the controller. I was blown away to feel every step of Astro as he traverses levels with each surface that he walks on, changing the vibration and sensation given off by the controller. For example, walking on grass had a slightly prickly feeling to it, while walking on stone felt more like a thud. These haptics also extend to within the trigger. In this part of the level, you need to use the motion sense in the controller to position your arm on a rock and use the adaptive triggers to hold it and climb. Here, you are zipping up on this object, and as you zip up, the controller vibrates, making it feel like you really are zipping something up. These vibrational feelings are really something that you just have to experience. They're very hard to convey through a video, but trust me, when you feel it, I've never felt anything like it before, and I was completely blown away by how precise these vibrations were, and the fact that you could really feel textures through them. Now it should be noted that while these features are within the controller itself, it is up to game developers to fully take advantage of it. Obviously, Astro's Playroom was the game that was meant to show off these features, but I'm interested to see how other game developers take advantage of these new haptics and adaptive triggers within the PS5. We also tested 3D audio, and full disclosure, we did not use Sony's headphones that are available for the PS5. Instead, we used the Bose QC35s. Now, in general, I think it made a bit of a difference, but it definitely wasn't huge. My friend noted that he could sometimes hear objects behind him, but in general, it was mostly a separation between left and right channels. Now, this definitely could have been because we weren't using supported headphones, or maybe you get the best experience from using the headphones that Sony provides, but this was just our first thoughts on 3D audio, and maybe in other games, developers will make use of it more effectively. But overall, guys, I was truly impressed by what Sony was able to accomplish here. The vibrations within the controllers conveyed a sense of texture, which I never thought I'd be able to feel. I was kind of skeptical that it might have been a gimmick, but these vibration motors are truly revolutionary, and I cannot emphasize how cool it is to be able to have this next level of immersion. The adaptive triggers also worked very well, especially in that climbing sequence that I talked about earlier. You could really feel the tension as you pull yourself up, which is really cool. Gameplay itself obviously was at 4K. My friend does have a 4K projector, so the gameplay was locked at 4K and at 60 FPS. Now obviously, Astro's Playroom is definitely not a very intensive game, so it should have been locked at 60 FPS, and I can say that frame rates were constant and very smooth, but we'll have to see how the PS5 holds up with games releasing later on. I know that for games like Miles Morales and some other games releasing in the future, there are two different modes to choose from. One of them is a performance mode with slightly lower graphics but locked at 60 FPS, while the Fidelity mode offers ray tracing and the latest graphics but locked at 30 FPS. So I think it's nice that game developers are giving you that choice of whether you want to have better graphics or better frame rates, and that is just up for the player to decide. So guys, there is my full in-depth overview of the PS5. I really hope you guys got a sense of what this console is like and most of its features, as well as the UI and gameplay, and I'm telling you, the vibration and haptics in the controllers are at least something that you have to experience on your own. But personally, I was completely blown away by this console, and I was very lucky to be able to see it and experience it one day after its launch. But if you guys liked the video, please leave a like if you enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe, and I hope your consoles come on time, whether it's the Series X or the PS5, and they're not too delayed. But thanks for watching again, and I'll catch you all in the next one.
Oh my god! And the sand! It changes on the sand! It's heavier on the sand!
No way! Okay,